Matt was looking for recording. Allison? I just saw a couple.
I am allowing recording. So if anybody else does not have it, please just let me know and I will make sure you have access.
Okay, I'll get out of the way and let you guys take care of that. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We thought maybe this would be the best way to communicate with everyone because we got numerous requests coming in to ask some comments in regards to some of the items or issues and events that happened yesterday and last evening. And obviously drinking some coffee here this morning and running still on limited sleep. But I just will start by reiterating one. I mean, it was one of the most disheartening moments of my entire life yesterday, being involved in that situation on the Capitol grounds. And it was just very troublesome, like it is for, I think, millions of Americans from all walks of life. Every American who watched that, I think, shared the same reaction, just one of fear, one of sadness, one of just disappointment, and just kind of where do we go from here? And as I went to the floor last night, I didn't know exactly what I would say, what I would offer as to my thoughts in regards to the debate that was going on. And I think many of you saw the floor speech that I offered. And I symbolically, if you didn't catch it, wanted to send a message, not only in my speech, but with my symbolism of walking across the floor of the House to stand with my Democratic colleagues and my best friend in Congress, Josh Gottheimer, to show America that what happened yesterday was not American. That was not democracy. That is not what our U.S. Constitution and our founding fathers and the generations of men and women who have fought so hard to keep our nation free put together in regards to the United States of America. And what they envisioned is that we would be proud Republicans, we'd be proud Democrats, we would be parties and individuals that would have passionate debates in our society, where we would have passionate disagreement on issues. We would, however, debate those issues in forums across the country, in a forum of debate, in the forum of exchange of ideas, and that we would, at that point in time, let those ideas win the hearts and minds of the American people, and then let the American people vote as to who the elected officials would be those that would govern for the period of time between elections. And as we went to the floor last night, I can tell you, I became more and more reinvigorated to American democracy. That now is the time for us as American citizens to come together and to become united as one nation to confront the problems that face us and solve these problems together, and to recommit to democracy, to show the mob rule, as I said last night, that you will not win by engaging in violence. You will not destroy America by engaging in violence. And what I saw there on the Capitol yesterday. What will win is democracy. And that's why we finished at 3:30 last night in the morning, the transition of power being recognized in the United States Congress by the certification of our electors. And on January 20th, we will have President Biden take the oath of office to be the president of the United States for the next 4 years. And that is the way it's supposed to be. And so, I know today as I woke up, I was also concerned, what do we do in the next 13 days? And as I asked many of my colleagues to search their conscience and their soul, and on some of the TV shows that we were talking on this morning and last night, and so some commentary and some exchanges and information that we were sharing with folks, I even asked the president to search his soul, to search his conscience. And I was glad that he issued a tweet today or this morning to say that he recognized that we will have an orderly transition of power and that we will have a new president come January 20th. And so I think that's the spirit upon which we should go forward. I think that's the spirit of recognizing that there's still going to be a tremendous amount of anger and fear out there, and millions of Americans that obviously took a path yesterday, potentially, where they do not want to accept the results of this election. And I think we just have to recognize that, one, the group that went to the floor of the House, the group that broke the barriers of our sacred institution of the Congress, those individuals need to be held to account. Those individuals need to face justice. But to the others that out there across America that are still in that position of anger, that position of fear, because they do not see the future of America the same way that maybe we all do, with that opportunity that democracy represents, that we continue to reach out to them, and that what we do is that we don't judge them. What we do to those individuals is say, look, this is democracy. It's hard. It's not perfect. And often the people we support may not win an election, but that doesn't mean we disengage, doesn't mean that we walk away. It means what we do is we engage as potential adversaries on policy, but we engage in the common bond that we are American citizens. And so that's the spirit I want to go forward with. That's what I'm going to do in our office. That's what I'm going to do with what I can control. And if anyone wants to do that with us, like Josh Gottheimer, who, again, my Democratic colleague of the Problem Solvers Caucus, and the 56 members of the Problem Solvers Caucus that will be there in the upcoming Congress, I'm all in. I'm all in. And I will tell you, I'm going to encourage more members on my Republican side of the aisle, as well as I know Josh is going to do the same on the Democratic side of the aisle. And we are going to have this new coalition of the governing, this new coalition of folks that come at this from that perspective. And with that, I will open it up to your questions, but hopefully we recognize that today is a new day. And it's not a day to be sad. It is a day to reflect, but it's a day to re-engage and to become even more energized that America is so worth the fight that we need to give to her to make sure that she's here for generations to come. So that being said, why don't we open it up?
Okay. Thank you, Tom. All right, let's start with Ryan Whalen from Spectrum, and then I see there are other folks, and so we'll just kind of go through the list here. So let's go to Ryan first.
Hey, Tom. To what extent does President Trump, who has been putting out accusations about the election that have in many ways have been shown to be false, and your Republican colleagues who have objected the Electoral College at an unprecedented level, be held responsible for what happened at the Capitol yesterday?
Well, first of all, I think we need to move forward, like I indicated in my opening remarks. I think people will judge the president. I think history will judge the president and his legacy. And that to me is, I'm just an individual. I'm just obviously just another American citizen. But what I will do is I will, obviously, I was very concerned with the rhetoric that I saw in the mall yesterday, and I will continue to ask the president to commit to what he did today in regards to support that orderly transition of power. And I hope that is where we go in the next 13 days, and I'm confident we're going to do that. And then with the next president coming in, President Biden, when he gave his comments yesterday, I applaud those comments. That was the right message that I think our country needed to hear at that moment, is that it is time for us to unite.
Thank you, Tom. All right, let's go to WHEC. I believe you all had a question. I think you're going to have to unmute yourself.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Dianna Dewberry with WHEC. Thank you so much, Congressman Reed. We really appreciate your time. Looking at polls from as recently as a few weeks ago, as many as 70% of Republicans did not believe this election was free and fair. Many of those folks may be among your constituents. What do you say to them?
Yeah, I recognize that. I mean, we were getting emails at 1 o'clock in the morning, yesterday morning, from our county chairs that were expressing that concern. They were raising issues of fraud and integrity. I was communicating with them at 3 o'clock in the morning via the emails. I was talking to them at 9 o'clock in the morning with the 8 county chairs and my other county chairs, where I said, you know, I understand the concern. But we have a constitutional process. The states in America are the adjudicators of the election results. The states sent their electors. The states did that process. 60 judicial proceedings investigated these issues, and not one found substance to the fraud claim. And I offered that as a response as to where we were and not agreeing to the objection to the electors. As you know, my position and my vote yesterday confirmed. But that doesn't mean those individuals have not come to that conclusion and that we need to recognize that. And to those individuals, I will say, I understand where you're at. I don't judge you. I respect that decision. I will disagree with it. I will say, I don't see that in the evidence. And then hopefully we can then move forward and say, look, we're at that point where there's going to be a new president. And what we need to do is engage in the election process, not walk away from it, and make it no doubt in the next presidential election that it's going to be a Republican-led administration coming in. And there's no need to worry about objections of the Electoral College, because it's going to be a Ronald Reagan moment when I became a Republican back in the 80s, where you had to see a red in his reelection. And that's my hope, and that's what I will offer, is my vision to win the hearts and minds of the American people. And let's win this at the ballot box.
Could I ask a quick follow-up? I was wondering if you believe misinformation plays a part into the belief of so many Republicans that this was not a free and fair election.
I think that is a bigger question that's not only on this election, but in this day and age of the internet and this day and age of instant exchange of information. You know, I hear it quite often. I hear, you know, it's on the internet, so it must be true. I hear, you know, members of Congress, for example, I hear, how many town halls have we done, Allison, where, you know, once you're elected, you get free health care for life. You got a guaranteed salary as a benefit. I mean, it's on the internet. It's got to be true, Tom. And, you know, I think, you know, the misinformation is one of the things in society. We have so much access to information, and we really have to remember the words of Ronald Reagan: trust but verify. And as I encouraged my committee chairs who are sharing some information with me that I was very concerned about, I said, you must trust but verify that information upon which you're relying upon. And it's hard. It's hard to do that work. But that's an obligation we as citizens in this society have to accept. We have to do the work of trust but verify and hold folks accountable based on the facts and the data that we can ascertain for ourselves. And that is the collective wisdom of the people that I still respect. Because when they do that, the American people are very wise as a group.
Thank you. All right, let's go to Hanna Bueller. I think I should have just unmuted you.
Yes, hello. Thank you for taking my question. I'm just wondering how concerned you are regarding the security breach at the Capitol. I mean, it just seems like a lot of people knew that people were marching and coming to Washington. Should security have been better prepared for this possibility?
Sure. Well, Hannah, first, it reminds me of why I support our law enforcement 100%. Our men and women in law enforcement deserve our support, and these issues to potentially remove support for our law enforcement across the country, we're going to be adamantly opposed against. And so there's going to be fair questions raised about, you know, what did the Capitol Police do to prepare? What did the backup plans? What were the preparation plans? And those are all fair questions to ask. But I have to tell you, I've watched these Capitol Police officers for my tenure in Congress. They are some of the best and brightest men and women that I've ever seen. And they are put in a very delicate position. Because remember, we are in the people's house. We are in the symbol of democracy and freedom across the world. And so they have this dichotomy of not locking down the building, not shutting the building down so that people can't access it and meet with us. As you walk through the Capitol, you'll come across the speaker, you'll come across me, you'll see us walking through the building, you'll see people coming and going on a regular basis. And so there's this conflict of securing the building 100% versus recognizing that we need to have that openness of democracy that I think we want as a society, and I know I still want as a society to be represented in our institutions, especially our Capitol. And so as that happened yesterday, and that mob, and it was a mob that was obviously very aggressive and overtook the Capitol, and they were just outnumbered. They were just overwhelmingly rushed, and they did the best they could with the situation. And I will tell you, I applaud the Capitol Police yesterday because they did not raise the level to the lethal level of force. That, I mean, some of my colleagues are like, why didn't they, take everybody out? And I'm like, could you imagine the symbol that would have represented if we would have had potentially thousands of people injured, killed on the steps of the Capitol yesterday as a result of this across the world, and to our adversaries like China and Russia, who would be sending that around the world saying, America, look what America has become. It has become a lawless society that is not able to be the beacon of freedom across the world. And so that those things have to be taken in consideration. So your practical question is a very good question. And I know I didn't offer you a short, concise answer to it because it's a complicated question in the sense of that dichotomy that I know these men and women are under in the Capitol Police and law enforcement here on the Capitol grounds. But yesterday I saw some of the best law enforcement that I've seen, given the numbers of what they were up against and what they were dealing with. And the response, once they was engaged and the resources were brought to bear, they dissipated a situation, and we got back to democracy in, less than, 10 hours, 12 hours, and it all blended in my mind. And we completed democracy and the transition of power in Congress by recognizing the new president and President Biden, even after that terrible situation occurred.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks,
all right,
man.
let's go to Jeff Preval. I think I should have unmuted you. WGRZ.
Yeah, thanks, Congressman, for your time. We are hearing from members on both sides of the aisle, basically raising the possibility of invoking the 25th Amendment and the possibility of impeachment, calling for that. Do you believe that President Trump should be removed from office?
As I offered in my opening remarks, I think, with the president issuing the statement today, if you would, where, he recognizes we're going through an orderly transition of power. We have 13 days until President Biden will be inaugurated as the next president of the United States. To me, that's the more appropriate approach to take. And to engage, going through a removal process, going through impeachment, that is going to potentially, you still have to remember there's millions of Americans out there that are filled with this anger, that are filled with this fear. And I caution my colleagues that maybe looking for that immediate potential headline, if you would, or that are looking for that instant type of response because they want to do something about this issue. We did something last night. We completed the democratic process when it was under attack by mob rule. We are going to complete the transition of power, and come January 20th, we will have a new president, and it will be now done and completed in a peaceful way.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, let's go to Megan Coleman. Did you have a question, Megan?
Yes, Congressman, thank you for your time. Can you describe where you were when the rioters breached the building? Where were you taken and how long were you in lockdown? And who did you call during that time?
Yeah. So I had just left the floor because we were going back and forth to the floor and obviously engaging in the debate and then taking care of matters at the office. And so where we were locked down was in my office in Longworth, which is right across Independence Street, just off the, if you would, just right through the tunnels, if you would, right outside the chambers and across the street. And we were there. We were locked down. We were given the kind of the instructions to stay there. And, you know, we had access to TVs, we had access to our phones, and so we could communicate with folks. And the police were issuing, they have a whole warning system that they deploy to keep us informed as to what's going on as best as they could. And so that's what we did. You know, I talked in constant communication with our office, with other members. Also, obviously, I talked to my family so that they knew I was safe, that we were fine. But at no point, once we were in lockdown, did I really worry about my safety per se, because I was just watching and just concerned for the future of the country, and concerned for my colleagues that were potentially on the floor that I had just left. And that's who I was focusing on in those moments. And then as we went through the moments and went from there, we continued to talk, where do we go next? How do we move forward? And there was a considerable agreement that there was some discussion, do we go to other areas? I know some of the senators were talking about going to off-site areas to do the balloting, but bottom line, everybody agreed, no, we need to go back to the House chamber. We need to go back to the Senate chamber, and we need to complete that process last night, and we need to do it live TV, so people knew that the mob did not win, democracy won, and our system of government and Congress functioned and did its job.
And if I could just follow up, please. We saw incredibly hateful symbols in the Capitol last night, swastikas. We saw a Confederate flag being waved inside. You described this as a mob. Is this the future of the Republican Party? And if not, in your estimation, what does your party need to do to turn things around?
No, absolutely not. The vision I have for the Republican Party is the vision, maybe best molded by Ronald Reagan. We are the party of the people. We are the party of freedom. We are the party of innovation. We are the party of opportunity. And it contrasts with the Democratic Party, which, as I told my colleagues on the floor of the House, I'm going to passionately disagree with them. I'm going to call them out for their big government ideas, and their government is supposedly the ones that are going to take care of the American people from cradle to grave. And I just disagree with that. I disagree with that philosophy. And so I think the Republican Party will rise out of this situation, and we will lead the country in a way that offers that vision that Ronald Reagan did. And as I told my colleagues, as we were having the debate about the Electoral College before the events of yesterday, one of the things that we need to focus on is we need to focus on winning a national popular vote when it comes to a presidential election. I love the Electoral College. I will defend the Electoral College, and that's my vote that I put on the record yesterday under the Constitution. But one of the things that I want to be part of is a Republican Party that wins the national popular vote, which shows me that the American people have given us their trust, and we won their hearts and minds with that trust in their vote.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you, Megan. All right, let's go to Ariel with WETM. Let me see if I can unmute you here. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, hi, Tom. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. Really appreciate it. In a previous interview, you mentioned something along the lines of saying, if you support violence, you support Trump. If you don't support violence, then you don't support Trump. Can you kind of reiterate what you said in that interview, and if you still stand by that kind of sentiment?
So if you could reiterate that, I lost you in transition there a little bit.
Oh,
so go ahead.
I'm so sorry. One of my colleagues mentioned to me that in a previous interview, you mentioned along the lines, if you support violence, then continue supporting Trump. But if you do not support violence, do not support Trump. Can you reiterate that sentiment? And do you still?
So first of all, I don't know where your colleague is referring to that, because I do not recall ever making such an association with the president of violence and nonviolence and that issue. What I'm referring to is that yesterday, what I saw that was brought to the Capitol was violence, and I I do not support that. I do not support folks that carry that mindset into the Capitol floor, into the Capitol, and thought that mob rule was the way they were going to settle their objection to this election. So that's where the interpretation is coming from. I don't associate that with, the clarification or classification that you articulate. What I guess what I'm saying is this isn't, and maybe this is what you're referring to. There was a Morning Joe interview that I had recently where I talked about the people that have come to this conclusion that the election was taken, and that they think that maybe the only path forward they have is war, that the only path forward that they have because their candidate, President Trump, didn't win election. And I've heard that rhetoric. That was rhetoric that was shared with me on a couple of my teletown halls, and from some of the folks that I highly regard in regards to the and to people back in the district. And as I told them, I said, that is not a path that we can pursue. That is not a path that I will support. And so if someone associated that with their support for the president, and therefore that they had no alternative but to go to war, I counseled those individuals strongly that I disagreed with them, and that war and violence is something we can never pursue, regardless of who our candidate is, regardless if our candidate doesn't win the presidency of the United States. And because these folks may have thought the President Trump should remain the president, and they had no alternative to go to war, I strongly encourage those folks, we cannot resort to that path.
Thanks, Tom. All right, Josh from WBNG, I believe you had a question?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Congressman, for taking the time to do this again. I appreciate it. Obviously, the president was suspended on Twitter for 12 hours or so. He'd been talking a lot about Section 230 earlier. What are your kind of thoughts to Twitter censoring him like that, and kind of the future of big tech moving from here?
Yeah. So I think, obviously the debate on Section 230 and big tech and the ability of a private company to censor folks is going to come back into our conversation, and rightfully so. Now, I appreciate the fact that the Twitter and other social media issues have taken that step to try to calm this situation down. But that's the existing law. That's the existing mechanisms that are there. But I think it's a worthwhile debate that we're going to have as a country is, do you want private companies, do you want public entities to be making these determinations as to what is allowed on the internet or not allowed on the internet? That goes into First Amendment debates. That goes into issues along those lines. And that is a debate that's something that we need to bring to a forefront. And that is something that I would hope that President Biden wrestles with and hopefully rectifies as we go forward, because the internet is no longer in its infancy. The internet, in my opinion, is up and running, and any type of protection that 230 encouraged so that the internet could grow is potentially in a different situation for us to have this debate.
I appreciate it, Congressman. Just a quick follow-up. Do you personally have a stance to 230 or any of the other issues? Do you feel private companies should have that right?
Yeah, I support the repeal of 230, but I am open to the reforms to replace it with the reforms that are being discussed. And that's why we need to have that debate, because it's not as easy as just repealing it. You do have to have a reform replacement.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. All right, let's go to Jerry from Buffalo News. Do you have a question, Jerry?
Yeah. Hey, Tom. How you doing?
Doing well, Jerry.
Good, good. I wanted to read a quote to you, if I can find it here, from your colleague, Adam Kinzinger from Illinois, who's also a Republican. He did call for Trump's removal under the 25th Amendment. And among the things he said was, quote, that the nation needs a sane captain of the ship. Do you feel that there are mental issues with the president? And whether you do or not, is it safe to have a president in office who leaves that impression with people? and still has access to the nuclear codes?
Yeah, well, first of all, I saw Adam's position. I do disagree with it. And where the president's at right now, and I appreciated his tweet this morning. That was very important to me to see that. And it wasn't his tweet; it was from his resources there. But his commitment to the orderly transition of power, to me, that was a very positive sign that we are going to go through the next 13 days the way that we should, without any more of this type of rhetoric, any more of this type of incitement, any more of this type of exchange that we saw yesterday on the National Mall. And that is good. And I think, to all the folks that are concerned about accessing nuclear codes and things of that nature, hopefully that public statement alleviates some of that concern. But I can assure folks, having there are mechanisms in place to make sure that those protocols are followed, that there are folks that are weighing in that decision-making process where I'm confident we're going to get through the next 13 days in a safe and secure fashion. And let's move in to that transfer of power to President Biden with that function.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks,
Thank
Jerry.
you.
All right, I believe WBEN had a question. You can unmute yourself. WBEN?
Hello, Nate.
Yep, we can hear you. Nope.
Oh, not working? There you go.
You're off mute. We can hear you, or we heard you earlier. We heard you earlier. Nope. Okay.
All right.
I guess we'll move on. All right. Let me keep looking through here. If you guys could just use the raise your hand function if you still had any other questions, that would be helpful for me. Or if you can message the chat function, that would be great. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I see you there.
There's Matt.
I think I just unmuted you, Jay Haas. Yeah.
This is George at Channel 4.
Go ahead, George.
Hi, Congressman. George at News 4 Buffalo. Are you aware that there were apparently buses of about 100 Buffalo area protesters who were there, and one of the representatives says that they were long gone by the time the violence broke out? How do you feel about that? Were you in contact with any of that Buffalo contingent that went down? And what have you heard about their involvement or non-involvement in the violence?
So I wasn't aware or am aware of any of the local folks that were there in the protest. So I don't have anything to offer in regards to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a good question.
Thank you. Thanks, George. All right. I think, did WYDC have a question? Allison, if you could help me unmute them, that would be great.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Yes, there you go.
Oh,
Okay, how's it going? So Senator Mitt Romney yesterday during the storming of the Capitol reportedly chastised some of his Republican colleagues, saying that this is what you've gotten, guys. This is what he's reportedly said to some of his senators. Do senators like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley have any responsibility for inciting some of the people who came into the Capitol yesterday?
You know, I don't judge my fellow colleagues, and as I offered my comments on the floor last night, as I told them, as so long as they've come to a conclusion based on looking at their soul, looking at their conscience, and their interpretation of the Constitution in a sincere manner, then I don't judge them. If, however, they're adding to this situation based on purely political calculations, political maneuvering, that to me is offensive and despicable. And I call them out for that. But only they know that. I don't know that. I can tell you, prior to the vote yesterday, I had had conversations with members of the House and senators where I know they looked me in the eye and they indicated to me that they were purely doing this out of political motivations. And that is wrong to me. And we need to stop that. We need to stop that. And I will continue to call that out as we go forward. And as these folks continue to play those political games, I think the American people are going to say enough is enough of them. And they're the ones that control who is their elected officers, who their elected officials are. And I, again, go back to my fundamental belief. It's the wisdom of the American people that will see us through this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reid.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Appreciate your patience as always, and appreciate you all joining us. I will have this recording as well, and I'd be happy to share it with you if you were unable to record. So please feel free to reach out, and we will be in touch.
All right, guys, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.